Okay, well, let's settle in for a quick little recap here, shall we? This is an official reset and reintroduction to something we've been talking about for a while around here, stakeholder experience. Over the past several weeks and months, actually, I've been breaking down a concept that I honestly think more business owners should be paying attention to, and that is this. Every single person who has a stake in your business directly impacts your reputation, and your reputation, that is your revenue. Not your latest Instagram post, not the trend that we're chasing this week because of the latest guru telling you how to trick the system, not whether or not you finally started a YouTube channel, your reputation. Because people are carrying your name, your work, and their experience with you into rooms that you're not in. So when we talk about stakeholder experience, we're not just talking about client experience. It's actually taking the entire idea of client experience and drawing a line in the cement to show you that they're way more than just our clients who have a stake in our business. And they're a big one. Yes, they're a large piece of the pie. But we're talking about every group that your business interacts with. Your clients, your collaborators and business partners, your business buddies, people who have never paid you a day in their life, your team. They see the dissonance if you live your values versus just say your values. How you treat them determines if you keep money in your business or you constantly burn money hiring new teammates, constantly lose your mind because you can't keep people around. And you. Yeah, you're probably the most important stakeholder of all. If you don't take care of yourself, then you burn out and the whole thing could burn straight to the ground. And the goal here is not to overwhelm you or add more to your plate. It's actually to expand your way of thinking beyond the basics that you've been taught, that this is an entire ecosystem, that your systems, your workflows enable you to efficiently provide an experience. That experience you give people is a strategy to your business. It makes it sustainable in the long term because when you turn your experience with everyone beyond just clients into something you've designed intentionally and they become obsessed with you, then they're telling other people about you and suddenly you're attracting opportunities instead of constantly burning the midnight oil trying to find new opportunities. So over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to pull together some of the most important parts of that and also interview various guests who I have seen exemplify stakeholder experience in different ways, some spanning several, some excelling at client experience and adding a touch of extra that make people become obsessed with them. Basically, we're going to be pulling out, spotlighting folks who do what I've already talked about throughout this series really well, which brings me to today's episode. I pulled up a virtual seat with Fran Moore, who honestly is such a good example of living stakeholder experience in action. Because Fran isn't just thinking about one stakeholder group and just delivering a great service to clients. She's managing a team as an agency owner. She's delivering for clients. And she's in that transition of learning how to lead people to get the outcomes you want instead of executing those outcomes yourself. If you've ever felt the tension of constantly grinding your gears to find new clients, and also I can't keep building a business that depends entirely on me, then this conversation is going to hit. So pull up a seat, button up the hatches, hold on to your tits. This one is for you. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Rooted and Relentless. I think we've established who I am. Steph Rubio, we're over here playing all the time, sharing deets, knowledge, having fun. And that is no different from today. I'm just not doing it alone. I'm super duper freaking pumped to have Fran here with me. Fran is someone we were just talking about before we pushed the record button that we feel like we've brushed virtual shoulders, like we work in the same building almost, but one of us is on the 17th floor and like, I don't know, the 5th, 29th, I don't know. But like we might see each other in the virtual hallway on Instagram and we're excited to chat today. So Fran, I know you help and coach aspiring virtual assistants build simple, profitable businesses that have real staying power. And you do that from a place of your own experience, is what I understand. You booked 7 clients in your first 2 months as a virtual assistant, hit 5K months shortly after, and eventually scaled to 50,000 a month. So quite the leap from 5,000 via an agency, all by starting with a strong foundation. Anything else you want to share about what you do and kind of your journey to this point?
No, past Fran really did that. She summed it up pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, short, sweet, and to the point, right? We want to be succinct. I don't think there's anything more succinct than like 7 clients, first 2 months, 5K, and then 50K via an agency soon after. So
Yeah.
terrible problem to have. Great example having you roll in here. I mean, let's talk about that a little bit though. So you scaled from 0 to 50K. A lot of people dream of doing that, hope to do that. But I want to go back a little bit. What did you actually do differently in those first 2 months when you booked those 7 clients? So when you're a new VA, how did you find those clients, bring them on, and what was that like pivotal moment where you're like, yeah, well, we're going to do more?
So mine is like more chaotic than most people. Honestly, I should have known I had ADHD 10 years ago. But what happened was I just told people I'm doing a thing. And I had a podcast and it was about money and like how to like side hustle while you were making money. And I would just tell my friends, I would be like, hey, I know how to build spreadsheets. Do you need anything like that? And they'd be like, sure. I know somebody who needs some help. They would be like, oh, yeah, one of my friends just opened a law firm. Do you want to help him? And I'm like, yeah. And so I just said yes to everything, which was a mistake. I don't recommend, but I said yes to every and anything because I was trying to get out of debt. And so it was a happy accident. And then I hired a coach after I did my happy accident. And I am a fan of quitting quickly. Like, I noticed immediately I hate lawyers. I can't be their virtual assistant because they're like, they think everything is major and needs immediate attention. I fired all of them. I was like, I don't think I'm the girl for you. And I would refer them to other people. So I didn't want to break bridges, but I also didn't want to do the work. So a lot of how I moved that quickly was just saying immediately after like 3 months in with someone being like, this is not a good fit. We suck together.
Good for you.
Yeah.
You did that without a coach? You did that part before a coach or when you hired a coach?
Before a coach.
Yeah.
Once I got a coach, we started kind of talking about what it looks like for Fran, like what I actually wanted to be. And it was just kind of always like, I just like making up ideas. And she was like, CEO. And I was like, okay, fine, whatever. But also, I know how to change things and build systems. And she was like, okay, but still CEO because you're not going to do the work. And I was like, that's correct. I don't like doing the work.
Yeah.
I just like thinking through what things work together. And my coach made it okay that it was okay not to actually touch the process and be the one sending the deliverable. Before that, I felt like if I wasn't doing all that, was I really running a business? Yeah.
Well, that took some mindset work, I would imagine.
Oh my God. I was kind of the worst manager, but probably the best because all my VAs were on retainers. But I'd be like, don't worry about it. I'll just do it. So they were getting paid to watch Fran work.
They were getting paid to also get trained by your
Correct.
expertise. I mean, what a great business model for them. Okay. I'm like slightly obsessed, or more than slightly, with you saying, like, at one point there, I don't even know if you realized it, but you were like, what does this look like for Fran? Like, your coach helped you stop and do that. But that's not like, you were already building some foundations and you already had some good habits built in, like quitting quickly.
Mm-hmm.
That cannot be overstated enough how important that can be for you. I mean, I work with service providers all the time, right? VAs that are transitioning to OBMs that are like, well, this is cool, but I have so much more power. I actually am way more tech savvy than the other 50 OBMs I've met in the last 2 years, And it's really like, okay, let's blow that cap off, remove all of those little limits or boxes you have been shoved into or you shoved yourself into because of whatever, and figure out what that looks like. I call it your big terrifying vision, because I find that women and historically underrepresented groups specifically have never given themselves like the pause or permission to even do that. We're always working for someone else. Like, we're the caregivers, the nurturers. I was working just to make money, to like make ends meet for a while. And I never stopped when I got past that point to be like, calm down, nervous system. You did it. You got food on the table. You're cool. What do you actually want to freaking do? And I feel like that's kind of when it all shifts. But even before that, quitting quickly will help you, because that's really where I was going with this, with my own ADHD brain, and literally why I take notes over here, okay, while we talk, because you never know where the world will take us. But I work with people months and into a year that struggle to get to that place of like quitting quickly, because they're still in like, oh, well, that's failure. What do you mean that's failure? That's not failure. That's called getting clear. That's called chasing fulfillment. That's called finally getting aligned. And again, permission for yourselves to stop worrying about what others are saying, especially online when it's like noise with a little extra noise on the side. What do you want to be doing? So you mentioned building a strong foundation. I'm curious, in your own words, what does a strong foundation actually mean for a business owner?
For me, it's not like just having a beautiful onboarding system, which I teach people how to do. Like, that's pretty simple to me. You can watch a YouTube video and do that. It's more about understanding what happens when that system doesn't work. Where are your stop gaps? Like, how do you make sure that you aren't the bottleneck in any situation? For me, right now, I'm still sometimes the bottleneck in a coaching situation where it's like my clients need their recordings and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to make you this beautiful email. I don't like AI. I'm going to write it. And my OBM is just like, Fran, just send it to me. We can get the summary and I can write it. I know how you talk. And I'm like, okay, fine. Just make a draft and I'll do it. And I'm doing the thing I teach people not to do. So, like, noticing where your stop gaps are and like also always doing the 6 months checkup. Sometimes we feel like once we built the system, we have the process, we have the SOP, we have the people in the right seats, we're good and we can just keep sailing. No, every 3 to 6 months, we're checking in. We're finding out, like, hey, why are these 3 clients always falling through the gap? What's
Yeah.
happening? How are we always missing their follow up? What happens to those 3 specifically? We record theirs on Zoom for some reason and they never moved over to Google Meets. Let's correct that. Like, thinking about all those small things to make a foundation where you understand building is constant, it's never done. And the way technology moves, there's not a moment where it's like, okay, we have ClickUp set up. That's finished. That's a wrap. No, ClickUp setup is forever.
Yep.
It is ever changing. It is like moving as you grow and as you think. You have a good foundation of ClickUp, but you need to keep moving and checking in every 3 to 6 months. And a lot of my clients, they're like, that's what's wrong with my old clients now. I haven't evolved. Yes. So a strong foundation is the willingness to know that you're not done, but everything's set and you have the people in the right places, but that doesn't mean to ignore it and neglect it.
Yeah, you have to constantly evolve, and that's different than innovate, you know?
Correct.
Like, evolving and innovation are different. You can still sustain without being an innovator constantly, but if you don't evolve, you will be left behind. I say be the Netflix, not the Blockbuster a lot.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, that doesn't really need an explanation, does it? Look at Netflix. Well, a lot of people don't know, depending on your like age and stage of life, that Netflix wasn't what Netflix is right now. Netflix evolved. Netflix was like, I'm pretty sure you got a CD in the mail, right? I was too poor to do that back
Yes.
then, but I'm pretty sure that's how it started. And now they're producing like live wrestling, millions of viewers kind of things. They used to mail CDs, like pre-recorded stuff, and now they do
Yeah.
live, and they have stayed relevant versus RIP Blockbuster. We know what happened there. And that's what I mean is like evolving. So when you talk about every 6 months, you literally describe being a CEO, which I love. It's not going to be shocking to you, right? Because that's the point. You talk about these things, but you just gave an example of doing that because like delegating, that's part of it. But making sure you understand that the work never stops and you have those built-in reviews and reflection points to look at all that because it's the ripple effect of a strategy is how I explain
Correct.
it. So all those little holes and pieces you'll find, while they might not be glaringly obvious, they benefit you in the form of elevating your client experience if you know it was old
Mhm.
and stuffy in some ways and that communication gap or something like that, like whatever that pain that you might hardly feel or can touch. And then time typically is wasted when you don't, we realize efficiencies. If you go a year and the way AI is changing and how fast, ways that you can absorb that incrementally into your business to get a little time back here and a little time back there. Well, that little time here and there adds up to lots of time, which means scaling. People want to talk about scaling. That's how you do it is you find these little ways that you can get better what you're already doing. You can realize efficiencies. I love to do this in a quarterly business review. And I actually took the concept from meetings with a C-suite. And a lot of CEOs, especially in that place, like to only innovate and not actually see if what they've innovated works. But when you come behind operationally, that's what you're doing. You're like, okay, here's all the things we said we were going to do. Here's all the goals we have. Now let's look and see if it's actually happening. Let's look and see where we may be missing the beat and what we're going to do about that. Because it's not a pass fail. It's not a we did it and it didn't work, or we did it and it went great. What went great about it? What are we going to repeat? What do we want to change and adjust moving forward? And it's this constant evolving.
Yeah. Yeah. I felt like we were more similar than I knew. I used to
Yeah.
work in operations and tech. I was like a senior operations lead, and a lot of my life was just pivoting data And you would be surprised how much the data changed from yesterday to today, in billion-dollar companies. Like finding those little small spots where it's just kind of like, hey, our enterprise team is actually losing $2 million this year. Nobody noticed it. Here's where the $2 million is going down the drain. Just been like fun to take like the technical knowledge I know of corporate America and make it more accessible to people who look like me. Sometimes I get this a lot. People are like, you talk so plainly. And I'm like, on purpose. I understand what people are saying. I've been in the rooms. I know what we're saying. I know what everyone's saying. I just don't think it gives other people access to understanding they can also be a CEO when we're constantly using like boardroom language. And people are always shocked when the operations brain shows up for real. And I was just like, okay, Stephanie shocked me too.
Yeah, girl. Yeah. So, same. So, what I do is similar, but I think that we went so hard right from boardroom language because I think a lot of people didn't understand it already in the space. And we put shiny new names on all of it, and people got
Yes.
really fucking confused, especially folks that started in the industry we're talking about, VAs, OBMs. They took like this transferable skill, right? And they come over here and they try to start a foundation, start a little business for some need. Like, I want to be home with my kids, like the basic shit. I know because I was there. And they start trying to meet this, but they never really learn how to run a business. And now suddenly they're consuming social media on 5 different platforms and they're calling it all these fancy names. And I'm like, here's what they're actually talking about. This is called a pipeline. And when I'm talking about it, I call out what it is, like in my mastermind. I'm like, this is what we're talking about here. Here's the motion. You're going to go, for instance, like continue building relationships because you just said, if this doesn't work out, and here's this fear, like I'm trying to condense it down. And I was like, you're going to keep nurturing relationships and having conversations with people. And we call that a pipeline so that it doesn't just like dry up one day. You lose one client, you're like, blah. But I don't expect them to then go be like, I'm building my pipeline. So I'm not interested in that part, incorporating up a lot, but I'm interested in them being able to shut out the freaking noise and be like,
Yeah.
what this person's teaching you is actually called marketing. And it's been that way for 100 years. They just put something on it and called it a framework.
And then it would linger. Like people would like be like, to circle back, never circle back. Forget it, Susan. We've already decided.
Yeah, done, son. We're not talking about this anymore. So yeah, I
Yeah.
was like, we're gonna not waste, millions of dollars in meetings where everyone makes 6 figures, and we're just going to cut out all the garbage, actually help you focus on plans. I mean, part of
Exactly.
that when you start scaling becomes delegation. So I know that when you're working with the folks that need to be delegated to and you're helping them, like VAs, realize that they're not just the help, essentially, is how I see
Yeah.
that. So I'm curious, for the folks that are looking to delegate, what do you think is really massively overcomplicated, either by the industry or themselves, when it comes to delegation? Like, where is it just being overly complicated?
For one, it became a buzzword in like 2022, even though I was like, this is just in Webster's and we all understand what the word delegate means. Let's not like trigger people. I think sometimes what happens to virtual assistants, because they have been the doer for so long, as I like to call them, is they feel like they are incompetent in this area, especially people of color, because we've been told this story that we're so good at doing the work. And the story was told on purpose. So we have created this narrative in our head that we can only do work. We don't know how to train people. We don't know how to delegate work. We don't know how to let it go. When really it's just a narrative you're telling yourself. Delegation at its simplest form is just you telling someone else, hey, this is what I typically do when I edit a podcast. Could you pick up this work and do it as well? Here are the steps I go through. That's the simplest form of delegation. And sometimes some people need a little more assistance when you're delegating to them if it's a complex tool. But for the most part, it's literally I hired someone who has a similar skill set to me. I'm telling them my process and how I do it. And then I'm passing the work off to them. I then, for the first few rounds, will do some like quality assurance. And I will, again, another good corporate term we should have kept. I'll do some quality assurance and I will review it and give feedback. And then we go from there until we get to the point where I trust you and I say, like, anytime Katie edits, I'm good. And it just takes time and practice doing it. I think the first one's going to be hard. You're going to try to micromanage. You're going to try to be a part of everything. And it's not anything to be mad at yourself for. It's a skill that you have to learn. Eventually you also go the other way where you get bad at delegating because you've just done it so long. You're just like, here, take this. And now you have become Miranda from Devil Wears Prada. So it's a skill that you constantly have to flex in order to make sure it goes well and you're treating other people like humans. The best part about people who have been service providers, when you become the delegator, you care. You're not just like snapping on people like, hey, why wasn't this done? I asked for that to be done. You're looking to see like, hey, what did I do? Like when I delegated this, I gave you the wrong due date. This is my fault. You're working to a date that I expected and not the date that the client was expecting. Let me step in and mediate. That's different from what we're probably used to. When we feel like the help, it's when that person just yells like, why wasn't this done yesterday? Like, what were you thinking? You knew it should be done. You knew I messed up the expected completion date. How did I know that? How was I supposed to know all those things? And those things happen to service providers so much, it makes them nervous to then delegate. But you're probably the best suited to do it.
Exactly. And you might find yourself caring too much, to your point,
Yes,
Fran. Like you just said that because we were in that role and we know what it felt like. We're so intimately aware of what it feels like, what we wish it would feel like, that we can design around that. But that shift from doer, you proved it yourself, that shift from doer to delegator to leader essentially is a difficult one to make because you know that you can hop in and do it.
correct.
Your standards. If you ask for something in 2 days and you're like, oh, well, their turnaround's 2 days and they have enough to do, that's not for you to decide. That
Correct.
is for you to follow through as the leader and let them and empower them and coach them as a leader to communicate with you if that's a problem, if they don't think that they can get it done in 2 days. The lack of communication and those kind of like interpersonal skills that both sides of the coin have to learn how to delegate. And one thing that you said that I talk about when delegating, and it sounds like you're peeling back or that you do, is you go to them and you're like, here's what I'm trying to accomplish and here's how I've been doing it. And you give them a little free rein to not copy yours step for step, but take it and make it their own in a process. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I feel like it gets more buy-in from them. They're like, fuck, this is our agency. And I'm like, it is ours. And I never want them to feel like the work we do is only a representation of Fran. It's also a representation of Lauren. It's also a representation of Brittany. And that is perfectly fine. And I love that. And I like when my clients know it's not just me. That's another good sign of a CEO for me is when people realize like I'm always big up in my team over me. I think they're the smartest people in the room. I think they're so patient. They're patient with me, they're patient with our clients, and they're so diligent. So I will tell them, this is how I see it. This is how I would do it. But also, give me some of your expertise. That was the thing that corporate America never did for me. It was always just like, we want this exactly like that. And I'm like, but that doesn't actually make sense. If we continue to pivot this data every single day, all we're doing is looking at the same thing, but not figuring out what we can compare it to. Why do we always want to pivot the same data? What are we getting out of this if we're not looking anywhere else? At this point, if our attrition is this high, what's wrong with our retention rates? What's happening with the product? Why can't we look everywhere else instead of just like, no, you need to look at the data? So I remember those thought processes and I'm like, they probably have something better than me. Like, this is how I think the onboarding workflow should go for our coaching clients. What do you think? Is what I asked my OBM. I laid it out for her, like step by step, what I wanted. Of course, I'm not asking her to do all the work of being the CEO. And then she comes back to me and she says, this one part I think is kind of dumb. And I was like, perfect. Thank you. What can we do instead? And she's like, well, we don't need Acuity. We can just use Dubsado for this. We don't need this. And we can just use Google. And I'm like, go off, queen.
Beautiful.
So
Yeah. Appreciate you.
yeah, it's just like the balance of knowing they are also a human and you're not just telling them what to do. They're not a machine. They have thoughts and they have skills, leverage them.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a little bit of ego here, which a lot of people don't want to hear or recognize. And like I'm talking in the mirror too, because I wouldn't say that I'm egotistical or anything. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
But think about it a little bit. This approach that this is my way. The reality is it doesn't feel egotistical because you're not even pausing to think about that. You're just like, I've been doing it. I'm in a hurry. Here's what's got to be done. Boom. Thanks for being here. I'm so glad I finally have an OBM. Go forth and do what I've turned over to you. You know, like I need the relief is more reality. But if you pause and you peel back the layers, what you're doing when you hold it so tight to your chest and you're like, this is how I set it up and it needs to continue this way, is saying that yours is the best way. And in the entire world, on the entire internet, like, come on. You would never actually think that. And so what you learn when you start to elevate to the leadership level is the power in diversity. That won't be shocking to you, Fran, just from a quite literal demographic diversity, right? But diversity comes in many different forms, you know, not only in skin color, but areas of the world, just areas of our own country, backgrounds, expertise. Some people spending 20 years in the workforce, some people getting a degree in 10 years and then working for 2 years, like, and that's all positive. That's all positive when you see that these differing, because I look at it like, I want this. I don't want us to be exactly the same because then like, what are we doing here? That's not helping me.
Never.
But if we can kind of like find some complementary ways of expertise and fit it together like this, and now you've come up with something different because I am the CEO and now I'm really busy and what I'm consuming is different than what you're consuming as a VA or like an OBM or an operations person. I hope you're keeping your skill sharp and learning about these systems continually that I used to learn about but don't anymore, so that you can come to my workflows and be like, you're a little crusty dusty now, Stephanie. You go out there and do your speaking engagements. I'm going to keep this shit running back here.
Correct.
And you have to be open to that.
Correct. I set Dubsado up for the first time for myself, like the first year they came out, like 10, 15 years ago. And I'm like, oh, I'm a queen at Dubsado. They came out at 3.0. It is my Achilles heel. I am like, where did they move this? Why is the data like this? Why, when I look at it, is it looking at 30 days? I want to know this month. And it just all sent me into like a spin. But my OBM is like, they just moved your cheese. And I'm like, her telling me they moved my cheese. I know this. But that's how my ego shows up sometimes, is because I know this, but also it's not my job anymore. Sometimes I just have to let it go. And that's one of the hardest parts of becoming a CEO from being the doer, is like letting go of the fact that sure, you have a lot of knowledge, but you're no longer the expert. Let it go, Fran. Again, go to your speaking engagement, go record the podcast episode, get out of our faces and let us do what we do best, and you go yap.
And do your quality checks. Like, I love that you brought that in too. You're like, you can still have that foothold because it is your baby, your mission, your goal, what you're growing, you know, your revenue as a collective team that you guys are bringing in. So it does behoove you to do those spot checks. So systematize that if you need to. Once a month, sit down and just spot check something. Once a quarter, sit down and spot check it. Or just be like, oh my gosh, I saw that we changed this. I would love to hear a little bit more about it. Like, that's all okay to do, keeping those communication lines open. All right, if you're still over there calling yourself just a VA, we're going to work on that. Tomorrow in part 2, we're getting into the real shift, like how you stop being the everything queen, start picking a lane, and actually build something that's repeatable, scalable, doesn't depend on you doing everything. So come back tomorrow because we're talking about how to shift from just the help into an agency that scales and sales, not more work, a different way of working. We'll see you for part 2 tomorrow.